Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Robert Lopez, CCNMA board member and longtime journalist in Los Angeles. Wow, what a panel we just heard. That was just amazing. Some great insights from Jenny Medina and Cecilia Vega on covering the White House, the 2020 election, what it's really like to be there inside the Oval Office with the president, and some really good tips for young Latino and Latina journalists on how to break into the profession. So thank you to Jenny and Cecilia. I've known them for many years. I followed their career, and they really embody everything that's great about CCNMA and all the great work that the organization has done for more than 4 decades. We've got another great panel in store today. We'll be talking about the Chicano Moratorium project by the LA Times, and we're going to hear from the editors who helped make this thing happen. But first, let's check out this video produced by Steve Salivar.
The Chicano Moratorium was unforgettable. We were very vocal, we were angry, and we demanded justice.
What I saw was unbelievable. It just it was like a powder keg that went off. And basically it was the largest violence against Mexican Americans in Los Angeles since the Mexican-American War.
And then they took away our voice. Rubén Salazar. August 29th, 1970, East Los Angeles. There's a national Chicano moratorium, and it happened. And it was glorious. It was like both a fiesta and a political movement walking down the heart of East LA. And I would say just about every barrio, just about every small town, farm town was represented there. We had heard there's going to be a riot. And I said, well, we didn't think the people would go for it. And we felt the community wouldn't, and it didn't. The only way they got it going is they broke up the crowd, beat up on women and children, went into the streets shooting tear gas and with shotguns, that people fought back. My mother expressed it 30 years later at a Sunday sit-down dinner after church, and we were talking at the table, my dad and a cousin and other. And my mother said, those little girls, the folklorico group that was dancing, they were so pretty, dressed so nice, they danced so well. The sheriff had no business coming into that park. Where are we now? We're still not at parity, but it has changed. And so we need to be moving forward.
I think that the true legacy of the Chicano Moratorium was that it inspired a generation of Chicano activists to go forth in the world and become our community's doctors and lawyers and educators and filmmakers and writers and social activists and healthcare professionals. It was a whole generation that was inspired because we wanted to make our community better.
It actually saved lives because people were thinking about social change, people were thinking about movement. As a result of the Chicano moratoriums, there was less drugs in the community, less gang violence in the community, because people were changing the directives toward the system, understanding that we needed social change to help the community. And again, you probably would find that many people that day also decided to go to law school, go for their PhDs, decided to go out and paint for their whole lives and create music. And so the visceral feeling of being tear gassed and being chased and actually being shot at, that's something to remember. But at the same time, when all the smoke cleared away, we still had a vibrant community and actually a stronger community. Many people actually visibly, viscerally, and emotionally made commitments to their families and to their friends and to their community to make sure something like what had happened on the 29th would never take place again.
I don't see myself as a poet, but I feel that that's, you know, how we have to deal better with each other. So you got to honor the past and be true to the present, and have faith and hope for the future.
Wow, that was powerful. Thank you, Steve Saldivar, for doing that. And I know you had a lot of help. Those were some really amazing voices. You know, sad yet, you know, necessary. This is something that was very important. And I'm just glad that we're all here today. And so thank you to our panelists. They are Laurie Ochoa, the Arts and Entertainment Editor of the LA Times, and also the current CCNMA President. We've got Steve Padilla, the Column 1 Editor. Thank you, Steve, for joining us. Martina Ibáñez-Baldor, the Art Director for the project and the designer of this just wonderful Chicano Moratorium zine. I still haven't got a hold of one yet. I've tried, and every time I go online, they're sold out. But I take that as a good sign. But you know, maybe Martina will be nice and save one on the side for me after this panel. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, Alex Tatusian, the Deputy Editor for the Data and Graphics Desk at the LA Times. And the presence of everybody here today should really tell everybody in the audience what a collaborative effort this was across all parts of the Los Angeles Times. This wasn't just a Metro project. This wasn't just a arts and entertainment project. This wasn't just a data desk project. This was a project that brought together a lot of people and a lot of tremendous talent. And like any project, it all begins somewhere. So let me start with a really quick story and then go to Laurie. In June 2019, there was a group of CCNMA board members and longtime organization supporters who met at my house. And during this discussion, we talked about a lot of things in terms of revitalizing and reinvigorating CCNMA, but the topic of the Chicano Moratorium also came up, and it was touched on briefly. Nothing really specific was discussed, but that may have, well, certainly a seed was planted, Laurie, and I'm hoping you can talk to us a little bit about how this project was conceived and how it ended up growing into you know, what it became.
Sure. I mean, Robert, we were at your house eating bagels and trying to think of ways of, you know, trying to keep CCNMA thriving. And one of the things you brought up actually was that the following year was going to be the anniversary of the Chicano Moratorium and also Rubén Salazar's death. And we had talked about the possibility of doing an event around that. And as you talked about it, it just became clear that this was a moment that should not be ignored. And it did plant the seed in my head that we needed to do something at the paper as well. And Danielle Hernandez was there, and Steve, I think, were you there? Yeah, I mean, I think with the three of us at the paper, it just got inside us that we had to do something more, something bigger. And Daniel and I kept talking about it, and Daniel started to put together, you know, ideas for things he wanted to do. And then simultaneously, there's a Slack channel at the paper, an LAT Latinos channel. And just at the same time, I mean, it was as the year, as it was 2020 and things were getting closer, other people started putting, you know, saying, hey, we should do something about the Chicano Moratorium anniversaries coming up. And we were just able to jump on that and started having meetings. People started putting in ideas. And what I loved about it is what you mentioned, Robert, is that it really was something that was from all parts of the paper. I love when we could kind of break those silos down and not have it just be one department's project. It really was a paper-wide project. And getting Steve involved was fantastic. You just had so many ideas, Steve, right from the beginning. And it really just took off. We had young reporters, who some who hadn't done major pieces, who had some incredible pieces. I was just thrilled to work on it and see it come to fruition.
Well, if I could add something, Laurie. So I think it was Daniel put together a pretty good memo early in the year before COVID really became the news of the day. And very comprehensive, listened to a whole bunch of stories. Well, then, of course, the pandemic started. And then, as many of you know, the LA Times, we also had furloughs for a good number of staffers. They could only work 4 days a week for a spell. So basically, the project kind of went cold because we were all sort of like everyone else in the world, distracted. And then I think it was in June, fairly late, I think it was Steve Saldivar who did the video, Robert, who said, hey guys, remember August is coming up and the anniversary. And so in a rather short time, Laurie, everyone kind of kicked into action because, we'd been derailed by the pandemic. But one of the things I thought that was really significant for the stories, and maybe others want to weigh in too, Robert, is we had obviously over the years written many stories about Rubén Salazar, and there would be, in fact, Robert, you wrote, I think like a 30th anniversary or 40th anniversary of his death story. And one of the significant things that really influenced a lot of the project, Laurie, and tell me if you agree with me, we decided that we would make the focus the moratorium. Past coverage always was Rubén Salazar was the point, with background of the moratorium. And this one, we inverted it. We really made it about the moratorium, and of course, talked about his influence as well, but he wasn't the lead character, so to speak, of our movie this time.
Absolutely.
And I think that influenced a lot, didn't it?
I think so, because I think, and I see Daniel is on the call too, but I think there was the sense that we had talked about the death of Salazar, but while we did have Robert's crucial piece about Salazar, and we should talk about that later, I think a lot of the history that hadn't been as well known, was what actually happened on that day and why it was such a pivotal, important day for Chicano history. I think about the piece Vanessa Martinez and Julia Barajas did on the women of the Brown Berets who had broken away and formed their own movement. And that was one of the pieces that I was just really excited to have, because it told a story that hadn't been told over and over again. And, it had these women who hadn't gotten as much attention as other people in the movement. And it was really exciting to see that their story.
And I think that was an outgrowth from the fact that there was just a lot of discussion. I think one thing that happens when journalists launch projects, they don't talk enough to each other. And we had regular meetings. Usually Alex was the one who did the herding of the cats. Thank you, Alex, for that.
Great cat herder.
And so these different ideas emerged. And so, like I say, one was the idea that we'd be on the focus, the moratorium, with Salazar as the supporting player. But the other key thing that I think emerged in a lot of the discussions was we just can't make this a history lesson. And because of the drama of the day, there's the urge to want to just talk about what only happened that day. And indeed, we had a story by Louis Sahagan that revealed things that you really didn't know about that day. But so much of the coverage really was kind of mirrored what we saw in the video. People saying, what was the impact of that day? What are the lasting effects? And I think that was a running theme through a lot of the coverage.
Martina,
it couldn't just be history.
Steve and Laurie have been at the Los Angeles Times for many years. They've seen a lot of these projects, and they've been involved with a lot of projects. I know that you're relatively new to the organization. As a young Latina, you came to this, I'm sure, with a certain idea and a certain perspective. What did this mean for you, just personally and also as a journalist, just to be involved with a project like this? And for you, why was this important to tell?
This project was important to me because of the history, and I was really happy to be involved and had seen the conversation start in the LAT Latinos Slack channel. And it was also for me the first time that I had gotten involved with the web team and helped design that project from the start. So I was excited to work with all these different people and be able to tell this really important story and be able to tell it in such a beautiful way. And then the zine project that came later was really exciting personally, because it was just a really fun, new, creative way to tell a story. And I was just excited about the feedback that we got on it and being able to share that story in a new format. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah, the zine was amazing, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit later, because what we want to talk about at that point is, I think, just the reaction from the audience. You know, your readers, your viewers. Alex, you and I had a conversation very early on that was sort of brokered by my friend Ben Welsh. For those of you who don't know Ben, he's the data editor, and I had gotten involved in this project thanks to Laurie, who invited me to participate. And I've known Ben for many years, and so I reached out to Ben and to let him know, hey, I'm writing this project. Just make sure you give it a little love on the website, when it comes around. And that's how you and I first started talking, Alex. What did you think about this? I mean, you've been involved with a lot of web design. There were a lot of different elements here, different types of stories. What is it that you were really looking for in terms of a web presentation, the look and feel, the aesthetic of it all? Because this was unlike, I'm sure, anything you had previously worked on, just due to the historical factors, the cultural, political factors. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you kind of touched on this, but that, remembering when this project came out too, I mean, this is a season of major upheaval in the States, asking really, really difficult questions. I think about race and policing, right? And I think, the moratorium wasn't exactly, didn't quite exactly hinge on that, but there was a very a sort of similar set of questions that bubbled up. And for me, it felt like it was just thrilling and really exciting to hear that other people at the paper were considering those questions with this historical lens, and to sort of ask, ask us to really look back at our own history as a city too, and ask uncomfortable, difficult questions to bring this history to light that a lot of people didn't know. I love a difficult design challenge, and I think having heard from Vanessa Martinez, who had I think originally told me this project was bubbling up, and then meeting Martina and everyone else on the team, it just felt like such an incredible opportunity to do that and figure out how we could sort of merge that historical lens with wanting to do really beautiful contemporary work and really do the story justice for the modern LA Times reader. So yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful sort of confluence of these urges and to tell powerful stories in a new way.
I was on the road when this package was published, and I remember waking up early in the morning that Sunday in a hotel room in Pismo Beach, and I popped open my iPad and I was like, oh my God, I was blown away. The everything from the font, the colors, the dark background of the web pages. I mean, it just made these stories for me, and I'm sure for a lot of others, just pop out in just this vivid and dynamic way. And it really just brought it to life. And so, hats off to Martina, to you, and to you, Alex, for this. Really, it's stunning, and it's unique. I was hoping that maybe one or two of you could, I know you brought some items to share with us, and I was hoping that maybe we could just take an inside peek at the artistic concepts as they developed along the way, and that perhaps both of you could sort of chime in and talk to us about what you were thinking, what you were feeling, and what it is you were trying to do in terms of this sort of aesthetic and this really modern day project with the web and, you know, all the artistic elements that we now have, but yet you're dealing with something that happened, you know, 50 years ago. So could
Definitely.
you guys share with us some of your insights to that?
Yeah, definitely. I brought along a little presentation that, you know, it's not exactly in a particular order, but I think will give folks a nice sense of like the kind of inspiration and process we went through. Martina, maybe I'll screen share it and then we can kind of go back and forth. Cool.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, sure. Alrighty. You guys see my screen okay?
Beautiful.
All right. Yeah, I mean, just to sort of, I mean, quickly address some of the framing that, you know, you brought to the conversation, Robert. I think like it's, you know, it was mentioned several times, I think already that, you know, this was such a kind of gargantuan effort across the organization. And I just want to shout out, again, Vanessa Martinez and Andy Riverson, who worked on the team with me and Martina to ideate this entire design process. You know, this is not one person's work, definitely, and they brought really brought their A game to it, and I'm just super proud of how it turned out. And that also includes, you'll see all these names later in the slides, but all the folks that worked on this, extending through the print newspaper design and every other aspect of sort of executing this vision that we kind of came up with. But just to sort of take you through it, I mean, we started out with some really wonderful inspiration. I mean, I pulled some of the things, and Martina pulled some of the things that we looked at from the beginning of the process. You know, we started out really far zoomed out, asking ourselves, as I think a good design process really needs to, like, you know, about the goals, like what is it sort of that we're going for here? Who are our readers? Who are our possible readers? And, you know, how do we approach this material, you know, in a way that, you know, is attempting to tell the story of the whole moratorium and really have you feel the feelings that, you know, folks felt when they were there, the sort of complicated tension of it all. So you'll see from this slide, I think, you know, a lot of, you know, really interesting mix of things that the design team brought to the table, including, you know, everything from revolutionary posters from the time, like, you know, hardcore revolutionary stuff to, you know, a lot of, you know, the pins and ephemera that were being passed out by, you know, the folks who were actually involved in the march and in the splinter movements, La Adelitas de Aslan, after the movement. So we assembled a lot of those things because they just had this incredible, bold, visual, typographic approach that was also deeply handmade, right? Like it felt like it came from the people, and like a really, in a way that, you know, Martina, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think felt like it really spoke to us in terms of the inspiration of the moratorium itself, like how it was really this very distributed, beautiful kind of like grassroots movement in a really difficult time, and a really like sort of powder keg of a political moment. So you'll see that influence here, but you'll also see kind of the zines, the more, you know, the Colby Printing Company book, you know, another huge LA institution, and a couple other really cool, Martina pulled that wonderful monotone photo page right there in the bright red book to sort of bring, again, that really modern kind of vision to the materials that we had to work with.
Yeah. You'll notice like a lot of the typography on this inspiration is heavy, bold, brutalist sort of type, and there's a lot of duotones in a lot of the inspiration, a lot of collage-y sort of handmade vibes, and I think that you'll see that throughout the project. We pulled from all of those references.
We did a ton of experimentation. What you see on the page was by no means the, you know, the only thing that came out of this crack team. There are 3, 4, 5 other versions of this project that, you know, could have bubbled up at different moments. And so, you know, Martina and I had put together just a few of the, just to show you a little bit of the sketching that went into, you know, the visual identity and the typography and the sort of the way that you feel the kind of cohesion between all the pages in the package. You know, this is, by the way, what you'll see in the next couple slides is work from everyone on the team, of course. But again, trying to unite that like kind of stark, bold, kind of somber reckoning with history with something really like bold, modern, and fun too, in a way that would draw you in as a reader. And you'll see in the O of the word Chicano there, and a couple other places in our slides, our attempts to sort of bring that history into the modern design, and to bring some of the references from the work that we were looking at that we were so inspired by. And this is where we ended up, of course. Like, I was super proud of, I think, Martina, Vanessa, and Andy really I think really endeavored to try something mixing, I think, something of a typeface that we really associated with that kind of revolutionary La Raza poster style with the kind of bold sans serif you see on the bottom, something really stark and modern and powerful. And so I just wanted to show you a sort of version of the finished kind of identity. The color palette that we used, bright but also toned down, I think, for the web.
I think with any project, we want to keep it looking modern and fresh and exciting, but we still wanted to honor the design of that time period as well. And I think we've reached like a pretty good balance of those two ideas.
Yeah, totally. This is, once we kind of arrived at an identity, like, I think we were kind of at the point of, beginning to sketch from top to bottom the whole project. Like, where do you sort of come to this as a reader? How do you first experience it? How do you see it? And started with this kind of concept of the landing page. It seemed like we were going to build a template that would make every story beautiful, like those dark backgrounds, the colors that permeate each post that you were kind of referencing, Robert. But it was sort of, it's always a challenge with these to introduce your readers to it. So, when they get to the page, when they get to the project, if they come through our website, or through social, it's really a question of the first thing that they see. And to us as designers, it's always really important that you give a sense of both the identity of the package, but also the story that you're going to get into from the top. I think that some of the best work in this vein we'll do that. So you'll see sketches here of, how to approach the landing page in different ways from beginning to, as you're sort of getting from the left to the right, a kind of progression towards where we actually ended up. But, seeing this sort of sketching of trying to break up the story and into sort of discrete chunks and sort of preview every element of the package, this very, very sort of multifarious package, in one place. So you could come to the page and get a sense of all the different little pieces you were going to get into.
On the second, can you go back just to one slide there? Yeah, the second one from the left there with the Salazar with sort of the newspaper there and some of the other images of him. That was your work of art, was it not, Martina?
Yes, it was.
With something like that, it could be too busy, as you know, but for me, this really just drew me in. It was just sort of like the whole package just in one nice sort of work of art. Can you talk a little bit about the concept just behind that? That is really, I just think that's really stunning.
Thank you. Yeah, I think in the first slide on the inspiration, you'll see some of the inspiration, like on the right here, there's a collage that we found online, and that really inspired the way that I wanted to approach photo collages. And then also the duotone kind of feel was something that I also saw a lot in our inspiration and wanted to bring that into the collages. And we made, I think, 4 different versions, one for each of the main stories. And all of them sort of have that same feeling. It's a duotone. There's different elements from all of the collection of art that we found. A lot of it Vanessa Martinez found. And we found, like, Steve found a lot of historical newspaper archives. And we were able to pull all that stuff together and show it in an interesting way, I think. Yeah, that's how that came together.
Great. Well, thank you for that explanation. I just really love that element. I mean, I love it all, but
yeah, they're great.
That's really nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully, I think there are some more, some bigger pictures of them too throughout. They're great. Yeah, super proud of them. I took a quick screen cap for those of you who, if you haven't been able to see the site yet, just to get a sense of, how that page looks on a sort of quick scroll. all the different stories kind of, chunked out. Steve's Great Voices video, of course. And, some call outs to readers to hear about their experience. It was very important to us to connect with people who had actually been there, if that was possible, on the tail end of the project too, not just during the reporting phase, to sort of keep this connection to the community and between the community and the project going.
Alex, if I could add something,
sure,
just concerning where the words fit in on this one. I think typically, I think a lot of design things, I think the word people just do their thing and then just hand it over to the designers and say, make it look pretty, which is not a way to run a railroad. And one thing I liked here was, yes, you folks adjusted certain things to accommodate the words, but in many instances, we were changing the words to accommodate the design, right?
Yeah.
I mean, repeatedly, you and I were going back and forth on a lot of things, and you'd say, well, it would look great if we had a blurb here or a sentence here. It's like, okay, well, how many words do you need? And we would, repeatedly, and I'm sure this happened also with the print as well as the web. I think we were writing things on command for you guys to create certain looks. And I think that's one of the reasons it worked so well.
And that's a great point, Steve. I mean, you could have some of the best writing around, but if it's not presented, in this case on the web, in an engaging and sort of aesthetically pleasing manner, you're just not going to draw people in. I mean, it could just be a big chunk of text and nobody wants to read that. But the way you guys just broke this up into just different pieces with these pull quotes and whatnot, I just, it was really just congratulations. This is really something that's really a standout project in my mind. And, I was
also, since frankly, not everyone knows what the Chicano Moratorium, it was. If you go back to that original page, sure, Alex, there is that quick, there it is, just below the main headline, just the 3 sentences that just encapsulate what the heck was this thing. So that way it sort of centered people and then launched them into the project.
Right. And I saw a number of comments on social media from people who weren't aware of this. And, a fair number of them, Latinos and Latinas, saying that, just this history was just never taught at my school. Thank you very much. And, it was an outpouring of audience reaction. Can you guys talk a little bit about that? Maybe with you, Steve, and then we can go to Martina talking about the zine, because I know you got a lot of react, and I know you made it easy for the readers, just click that box there and boom. Tell us about your experience.
Well, I was blown away by the reaction, by the way. I mean, I knew it was a pretty good project, but I didn't expect to get what we did. And we heard from young Latinos who said, this is like discovering ancestors I never knew I had. That was a beautiful comment. We heard from a lot of educators. We heard from high school teachers as well as college professors, generally professors of either journalism or of Chicano studies. And people just said, thank you for telling this tale. I think it was Molly Hennessy Fisk, our reporter in Houston, who first passed on that she heard from readers who asked, will there be posters? Posters, that never occurred to us. And anyway, that might be a good segue for posters and zines. I'll hand it over to Martina.
Yeah, the posters, I'm not actually sure. I didn't get a lot of reactions about the posters, but we did make 2 posters that you can find online. And then the zine idea came after the whole package was published. Gustavo Arellano actually posed it in our diversity Slack channel at the LA Times as an idea to reach educators and students.
And that's because, if I could quickly add, and that's because so many educators said, this is great, how do I get it for my students? That's I think what prompted it.
Yeah. And I thought it was a really great idea. I had, during the pandemic, personally become really interested in the idea of zines and had done my own personal zine project. I had worked with a local printing studio in LA. So I knew what the process involved. And because me and Alex and Vanessa had already created this extensive style guide for the whole project that we had passed on to the print team and the marketing and events teams, I was able to put it together fairly quickly, created a business proposal, pitched it to the store and to my bosses. And we got it produced pretty quickly. And I think I had pitched it originally as like 300 zines, and I was encouraged to start with just 100. And we sold out in a few hours, and we ended up doing a few more runs of it and selling out each time. I think they are available now on the website. We're not doing these like cool Rizzo covers anymore. We found a different vendor, but I think they're still available on the website if you want to get one.
So I don't get a cool cover if I order now, huh?
No, but I'll send you one.
You know, Alex,
Can I add that you also, Martina, give people instructions on how they can print their own in true zine style?
Right. We also wanted to make it available for free for educators and students to download on their own and print them themselves. So we provided those instructions on our website with a link to the PDF where you can print it out, and it's already collated in a way so that you just print it out, staple it, and it's ready to go. So we did hear from a few educators who said that they wanted to include it in their curriculum. So that was really exciting.
Laurie, you know, there's a lot of stories that were part of this package, and with something like this, it's easy for them to sort of blend into one another. How did you guys decide which types of stories to write and how to make each one uniquely distinct?
Well, it is what I loved, that a lot of the ideas did come from the writers. But I think one thing that occurs to me about this whole project is that, you know, representation does matter. I mean, I feel like we're at a point at the paper's history where we do have a good critical mass of people who from all parts of the paper were suggesting stories. Gustavo and Daniel wrote that great piece that ran on A1 that Steve helped, you know, shepherd through, that really gave, like we talked about, the emphasis on the moratorium itself and the people who were involved. But then, you know, Gustavo did a piece about, you know, reading Salazar's work and kind of really evaluating it and not looking at him like someone, you know, on high, but really, you know, looking at the flaws and what was inspiring about his work. But I think, you know, Steve is in charge of column 1 and I run Sunday Calendar. And this was a project where you know, because it was done very quickly, we didn't have to go through the months and months of project planning in the usual way. So I could just turn over all the pages of Sunday Calendar to this project, and Steve was able to use his placement on for column 1 and A1 and worked with Lewis on that great timeline and what happened on the day of the moratorium. So I feel like that's a really important thing to acknowledge too, that we have people in place at the paper who can just, you know, make things happen. Because frankly, you know, there was a period when I wanted to look at the Latino project that the paper had done years ago that they won the Pulitzer for, and there really was no momentum at that period. It was one of the other anniversaries for it. And so it's exciting that at this moment we could just make this happen. And I know Steve.
It pays to have a bunch of folks who are jefes, you know what I mean? And running the place. By the way, one of the things I think that also really came through in the project, and I think this is a good lesson for journalists all over, is how you bring your own experiences and knowledges to something. And so I think that showed why there was, I think that's why so many of the stories had just considerable depth, for lack of a better word. And one of the more astounding things that came out was when Louis Sahagan wrote his story, he mentioned that there were two, along with Rubén Salazar, there were 2 other people who died as a result of the moratorium. One was killed that day by the cops. Another one, a young man, was fatally injured and died later. And that young man was basically blown up. There was like a bomb that went off, and he was sent through the window of a tortilleria there on the boulevard. Well, Louis Sahagan's grandmother owned that tortilleria. Okay, and that was just one of the more mind-bending facts of the whole of the whole project. And in Lewis's story, he mentions that. So I just think it's an amazing example of just people bringing their personal knowledge, experiences to something. And I think that was shown in the stories and in the graphics, certainly the stories that Laurie handled, right?
Yeah, especially your story, Robert, I think was one of the central pieces that kind of was one of our, guiding lights through the piece, because you gave it to us early enough that we could look at it and know, okay, this is what we're covering with Salazar. And just getting your personal reporter's journey through that story was fascinating to read. And it was so exciting to be able to publish an in-depth piece that, got both the cultural history of what was happening, but also just what it was like to be a reporter at the LA Times at a moment when the paper itself was going through a lot of reckoning. Your story, I think, was a great thing for a lot of the young reporters today to look back at and see like how you just kind of plowed ahead and did the story on Salazar back in the day, first, filing that Freedom of Information Act request.
Yeah, I have to say, I give a lot of credit to the Los Angeles Times. My piece wasn't entirely flattering for the organization. For anyone who read it would know that. And, and that's the way it was. That's the truth of it all. And the LA Times allowed us a lot of freedom and a lot of space to levy some criticism. And so, that's the sign of a great organization. And it was a great project. And what for you, Steve, native Angelino, what for you will be the legacy of this, or what should be the legacy of this project as we look back on it, let's say 5-10 years from now?
Well, I think the legacy is, well, there's a few different ones. I think internally at the paper, it's kind of reminded us of our heritage and so to speak with Salazar. And I think it was a very valuable project in how it brought various departments together. Not that that's never happened before, but this was in a very, I think, profound way, and also a very pleasant way. There was, sometimes when you have these big projects, tensions rise, people get angry, they're all stressed out. And this was a lot of hard work, but generally people were having a ball. And that was one of the things that was so great about this, just the communal nature of it all. I think there's a value in how this, in terms of legacy, and how this showed this sort of Latino face of the LA Times to the community. And just getting reactions from people named Gonzalez and Martinez and Ramirez, a lot of people with Z's at the end of their names were sending us notes and commenting on Twitter and social media about, wow, only the LA Times could do this story. And that made me feel very, very, very proud, by the way. I don't know if others had that same reaction to it.
Well, it certainly, only I would agree that only the LA Times could do something like this. And I'm glad that the LA Times did do this. Thank you for all of you. Martina, I've seen projects, that sort of look at these cultural, historical issues that kind of fall into these sort of stereotypical depictions, graffiti font, cheesy elements. Did that ever cross your mind with the art? And any pitfalls that you tried to avoid? Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, because it's easy to fall into that trap, I think.
Yeah, I think with any project, we wanted to keep it feeling modern and fresh, but also drawing on the inspiration that we found. It was a big concern of mine that we didn't want it to look too tropey or like fall on those Latino sort of references that you might see a lot. And we did a lot of self-editing. I think Alex might have some examples of that, but we did a lot of self-editing, and we had a lot of conversations between the design team on what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. And I think we reached a pretty good balance. I don't know, Alex, if you want to show that slide.
Yeah, why don't you, Alex? I think we have a few minutes here still left, so let's look at that.
Sure, let me pull.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
squiggly lines here, I think we actually ended up taking out and going with something a little more simpler. We just didn't want to overwhelm the design with all of these little elements. We also ended up scratching this idea with the logos and the eagle too. We just didn't want to fall on those tropes too much, I think.
Yeah, and it's all about, like, I mean, the celebrating also the design sense from the time, which is so wonderful and vibrant, and like, and you know, brings in this like really long history. And you sort of see that in the experiments in the middle of the page too, with like creating a seal sort of for this project, which we thought, like, you know, is such an important part of the protest materials, is this stamp kind of. And you know, the more we did it, I think Martina said it really well. It's sort of like, you have to sort of step back and ask yourself, like, are we really serving the story and furthering the historical, the depth of what we're doing here? Or are we, you know, kind of, you know, just sort of like aping tropes that we've seen out in the wild, right? And just bringing them and doing and sort of rehashing something that, you know, is not our business too as a paper, right? And like, I think I'm really proud of the sort of middle ground we hit of, I think, celebrating, but not wholesale borrowing. If that makes sense.
I think you're muted, Robert.
Oh, sorry. Am I muted?
Oh, Robert was muted.
I was muted. Sorry about that. Thank you for explaining that. I think you guys did a wonderful job with the entire project. I was pleased and proud myself to be part of it. So thank you, Laurie. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Martina. And thank you, Alex, for joining us today. We could go on for another hour. Unfortunately, we've got something really important coming up. The 2020 Rubén Salazar Awards, the reason we're all here today. So stay tuned, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.